So I got my TrackSaw. I've got a project coming up. I figured this would be a great opportunity to get this thing out of the case. Run through this thing with you real fast in case you've never seen one of these before. Now these TrackSaws have been out for several years now. In fact, I think that DEWALT came out with this model here around 10 to 12 years ago, if I remember right. I've only owned this for about 6 or 7 years. I can't remember exactly what year I bought this. Now this is model number DWS520. It's DEWALT's version of the TrackSaw that is in the corded model. They've since come out with some newer models that have a 60-volt battery that you can plug into these and make them cordless. They're quite a bit more expensive though than this one here. This one's worked great for me over the years, so I'm just gonna stick with this one and keep using it. Now the original purpose that I bought this thing for was the ability that it had to break down sheet goods with minimal tear out. Now if you're not familiar with how these work, you can pick up these tracks like you see here. This is a 4-foot, or they actually call this a 49-inch track here. And they also carry this in an 8-foot, which I also own. It's put away right now. So for sake of example, and the width and the space I've got available to work with here on the camera, I'll show you how this 4-foot one works. So basically, this is designed to go on your workpiece, and then the saw fits on top of the track like so. You run this thing forward, and it trims right on your rubber edge here on the saw. Now when you first get this track, and you run your saw down it, the rubber you actually trim the rubber down so it's a perfect match with your saw blade from there on out. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you the ability to help you not only line your workpiece up where you need to make your cut by just lining it up on your rubber edge, but it's also going to minimize that tear out on the top of your board as you're running it down. Now this is also a plunge saw, so basically what you've got is when you push on this top lever here, it gives you the ability to run your saw down like so. So you can see where your blade protrudes down. And then you can also adjust your depth of cut by adjusting right here. So basically if you got like a 3/4 inch piece of wood or even up to 1.5 inches, you can run your saw stop here down to where your blade just barely protrudes down through the bottom of the wood there. You've also got your miter cut here as well. By loosening both these nuts up here, the front and back, now you can run your saw up to 47 degrees over. So what that looks like here on your track is you run that over like that, then you lock both your levers back down, and you can run your miter cut down here all on your track as well. Now when it comes to your blade change out, that's actually pretty easy too. So you can see this little window right here. So by running this down to where the arbor is visible within this little viewing window right here, and you press your arbor lock on the back, and then there's a lever on top that you slide over, and that locks it in position to where you can now change out your arbor here. And when you're done, you just simply press your lock back over, run that back up, and you're good to go. Now, the nice thing about that as well is they also include right here in the end of this handle, your Allen key. So everything's right here with the saw that you would need to be able to do that blade change out. Another nice advantage of these TrackSaws is just how smooth of a cut you can actually get with these things. They're by far superior to any circular saw that I've personally owned before you get into actually kind of like a cabinet grade, like a table saw or whatnot. But the nice thing about this is instead of having to run a full 4x8 sheet of wood over a table saw, especially if you don't have the outfeed table or the right setup to be able to push that through efficiently and safely, you can just take this to your workpiece, prop up your 4x8 sheet of plywood or whatever it is you're cutting down on top of some 2x4s to get it up off the ground a little bit. Or what also works great for that is having one of those sheets of the 1.5 inch foam. You can lay your board on top of that as well, and that'll help minimize tear out on the bottom side as well as the top side, and then you're off and running. Another nice feature this has here on the back side of the saw is an anti-kickback feature. As you can see here, if you run this saw forward, right now I can run this thing backwards as well. But if I take this knob and I turn it, now when I run this saw forward on the track, if I go to push backwards or it binds and tries to kick back on me, it locks onto the track and won't allow it to kick back. That's a pretty nice feature to have because now you could take this thing kind of overhead, or you could actually trim down sheet goods that are maybe on the side of a wall if you're doing a barn or sheathing on a house. You can set this track up and trim not only horizontal but vertically as well, and not have to worry about that thing kicking back on you if it binds one direction. Now over the years, I've been extremely happy with this saw and how it's operated. I originally bought this saw to break down sheet goods. When I was building a lean-to out there for my cattle, I used this to trim down the sheet goods for that project. But I've also used it on this miter saw station that you see behind me. This thing had every bit of close to 30 sheets of plywood, all said and done when I built the drawers and everything. And I broke everything down on the floor before I brought it to my table saw or my model saw to make the final cuts and measurements. So if you've never had a TrackSaw before, but you're in the market and looking to make your first one, the first decision I would recommend making is whether you want to go with the corded model or the cordless model. There is a bit of a price difference in there. If you go with the cordless, there's a pretty decent jump in price. So if you're looking to save a little money, you might check out this one made by DEWALT. Like I said, this one's been out for several years now, and it's been my tried and true. It's one of my go-tos in the shop here. And I don't see myself getting rid of this thing anytime soon. In fact, I'll probably be with me for quite some time. That's all I've got for you today, guys. Appreciate you taking the time to watch this review. I'll catch you guys on the next one.